That's okay.
Yeah, we didn't end up having to.
I'm sorry, I really would have called.
We'll do that next week though?
Need a district fund.
Since we don't have anybody.
She did, but she was from the next. Hi, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
All right.
She's gonna be
It's your
doing a
Monday.
presentation, right? I'm talking to the public.
I think this is the last day we're gonna enjoy this kind of.
She's fine.
I saw a guy out there.
I think we're gonna have to kill it. So, it's like, he wasn't on my.
She was how nice we ended up with a lot.
Did you start recording?
Are you ready?
Yep, okay, start recording.
I'd like to call in order to Human Services Board meeting. My name is Ralph Harrison. I'm the Vice Chairman. I'm filling in for Larry, who's not here right now. First on our agenda, appreciate everybody coming. That's the first thing. Is any public comments from anybody here? Any public comments?
Sure, I'd like to make a, well done at the county budget. Very good. Exciting stuff.
Last chance, any more comments from the public? Anybody on Zoom? Anybody on Zoom have any comments? Last chance, anyone on Zoom? No, we'll close that part of our meeting. And number two is, we have a guest. Oh, no, wait, we gotta do this. We have a new member, Kay. Glad to have you here. It's a new member from the county board on the board replacing
Rachel.
Rachel, yeah, so welcome, glad to have you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
We're good, yeah, we'll do that. Okay, we'll go around the room so you know who everybody is.
Okay, thank you.
Where do you want to start? We'll start over there. How's that? Surprise, surprise. No, sorry.
Hi, I'm Tammy Steyer. I'm a Deputy Division Manager for Behavioral Health. Hi, I'm Heather Faust. I'm the Behavioral Health Division Manager.
Beth Roberts, the Long-Term Support Division Manager.
I'm Harold Singstock, citizen member of the city of Oshkosh.
I'm Mark Weisenfeld, citizen member of the city of Oshkosh.
Karen Powers, County Board, District 25.
I am Janet Roloff. I'm the manager of the administration division.
Renee Sirocco, Deputy Director.
You know me, go.
You know, Mr. Ralph Harrison, District 31 Supervisor.
Alicia Wenger, Executive Director at Christine Ann Domestic Abuse Services.
Chris Knave, I'm a citizen member as well from the city of Oshkosh.
Yay, thank you.
Annette Beatty, I'm the Child Welfare Manager. We've talked before.
Yes, we had.
Nancy Rainier, Administrative Associate for Human Services.
Great. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Kay, again. And we have Rebecca, you would like to introduce yourself?
Hello, Becky Nichols, Supervisor from the City of Menasha. Hi, Kay. We're practically neighbors.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, next, I think our business is, because now we have a new member, we have to elect a treasurer, right? So we need secretary, sorry. That's right. Anyone with nominations for secretary? You go all that shy?
No, so just so you know, secretary doesn't mean that you have to take the notes. We still have our administrative associate doing that. So it's.
I nominate myself.
It's a designation.
I'll second it.
Second, okay. Anyone else? Last time, anyone else? All in favor of Aaron? Aye. Maybe opposed? Welcome. They were just kidding about the notes. You really do have.
I really do take those.
You can take notes if you want.
No. Compare them, I guess. Okay, next would be our program. You want to introduce her? You want me to?
Yeah.
No, okay. I can.
So this is Alicia Wenger from, as she introduced herself, from Christine Ann. You may remember when I, at the beginning of the year, which is coming up soon, and I come to the board and say,
any ideas or topics presenters you'd like. Internally, we try to also get our partners, people we work with pretty closely, to come to the table as well. So Alicia was grateful enough to drive up here from Oshkosh and join us today. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Again, my name is Alicia Wenger. I'm the Executive Director of Christine Ann Domestic Abuse Services. Grateful to be here today and just share a little bit about what our current programs are, and then also some exciting news of what's to come for our organization. So our organization, we are a nonprofit that serves all individuals and families that are impacted by domestic abuse. Our primary service area is Winnebago County and Green Lake counties. So that doesn't mean that someone from outside of those service areas can't access our services. They absolutely can. That's just where our primary funding streams are coming from and where our service area is. And then we have different sister organizations like Harbor House, which covers Outagamie and Calumet counties, and Solutions, which covers Fond du Lac County. So there's a domestic abuse agency that covers pretty much every county in the state of Wisconsin. We're just grateful enough to serve Winnebago and Green Lake. So we operate a 37-bed emergency shelter that is located in Oshkosh. Again, that is for anyone who's impacted by domestic abuse, men, women, children, families, you name it. Our services are inclusive for anyone who may be impacted by domestic abuse. When we have families that come into our shelter, they will get their own bedroom. When we have single adults with no children, they will typically be sharing a room with other single adults with no children. Every room has its own bathroom, but then everyone shares the common spaces like the kitchen, the living room, the indoor and outdoor play areas. So we have been consistently full in our shelter since the beginning of summer. It's typically when we see a bit of a spike come. When school lets out for the summer, we do see an increase in our shelter services in particular. At one point this summer, we had 23 children in shelter. That's a lot of kiddos running around. So our play areas got a lot of use. But aside from the shelter, we also have empowerment services, which support survivors on an outreach basis. So people who really don't need the safety of the shelter, maybe they have friends or family that they can stay with, or they are financially stable and don't necessarily have that safety piece of it and can support themselves on their own. And so they can meet with us by an appointment only basis. So that can be at any of our 3 locations. Our shelter in Oshkosh. We also have an office located in Levin in Menasha. And then we also have another office out in Green Lake in the Town Square Community Building. So to serve rural survivors out there. We also are in the courthouse out in Green Lake every Tuesday as well. So just to put in some numbers for you all, our shelter serves between about 200 to 300 individuals each year. Our outreach services supports closer to 500 to 600 individuals each year. Of those, about 600 individuals on an outreach basis, 70% of them are receiving legal advocacy from our organization, which is one of the fastest growing programs that we have at Christine Ann. We definitely saw an increase once COVID took place of our legal advocacy services that were greatly needed. So we offer support with restraining orders, divorce, custody. If anyone needs court accompaniment, we are able to go to court with our clients. Even if it's a closed courtroom, they have the right to have an advocate there. So we support survivors through that process, which can be incredibly intimidating and overwhelming for a lot of folks. And then another big program that we have is our youth program. So we have a team of advocates that works with children, typically on an outreach basis. So they go into 9 different school districts throughout Winnebago and Green Lake counties, and they meet with a child who's impacted by domestic abuse, typically for about half hour, 45 minutes out of that child's day, usually during a free period. and just providing that extra layer of safety and support for those kiddos. We also provide the same level of support for children who are staying in our shelter as well. So we're able to go to school and meet with them or meet with them at our shelter as well, and just provide support to the entire family unit that's staying with us. So those are some of our core programs that we offer. And something that I just wanted to mention that I'm sure most of you have heard about in the community is we are currently going through a capital campaign to purchase the beach building, which is located at 240 Algoma Boulevard, which is right next door to our current location. So what's wonderful about that is that we will be selling our current property and moving all operations into the beach building. We will be selling our current location to another local nonprofit, Solutions Recovery, which is very exciting. They'll be able to expand some of their sober living programs. By us moving to the beach building, we will be able to expand our shelter from 37 beds to closer to 60. We will be able to add a brand new transitional housing program by owning the beach building, which is very exciting. It's not a program that we currently offer just due to space. So because we are almost doubling our square footage with the beach building and the way that it's currently set up, we will be turning 11 of the apartments that are on the 3rd floor into a brand new transitional housing program. So we'll be able to support up to 11 families for up to 2 years. Doesn't have to be that long if they don't need us for that long, but they will be able to get the support and some of those life skills and financial literacy to help prepare them for full independence once that 2-year time frame is up. So we're very excited to be able to offer that. Something that also comes along with the beach building is because it is more apartment style and less people sharing in a communal living setting, we will be able to house survivors with their pets, which is a huge barrier for a lot of folks. A lot of individuals will stay in that abusive environment if they know they can't take their animals with them. Their pets are like their family members, and so that's a big piece in not leaving that relationship, is fear of that animal being harmed if they do. So we're very excited to be able to offer that. We will be the 4th shelter in the state of Wisconsin that will be pet friendly, which is very exciting. So that's a little bit about what we have going on. The timeline for that, we are still in our current building. We will be officially purchasing the beach building at the beginning of 2024. And we have some light construction that we need to do on the 1st floor. And then we will be fully moved out of our current building and into that building by September of 2024, which happens to also be the 40-year anniversary of our organization existing. So great way to celebrate 40 years. And we feel very grateful to have the partnership that we do with Winnebago County as well. And so thanks for having me here today. Does anyone have any questions at all for me? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually have 4 questions. What do you do when you're full, when all 37 beds are taken? Where do you send people?
Yeah, that's a great question. So because of the current limitations of our building, there are times when we unfortunately have to turn people away, in which case we are referring to Harbor House in Appleton, Solutions in Fond du Lac, Day by Day Warming Shelter in Oshkosh, or also Father Cars are some of the main resources that we provide folks.
Do you drive them there too? Like if they have to go to Appleton?
Yes, we will provide them transportation assistance as well, whether that's paying for a cab or yes.
Okay. Second question, do you have many people who have been there and come back, some repeat residents?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
The national statistic is takes an individual 7 times to leave that relationship before they permanently leave. So they're coming back they're leaving that relationship 7 times before they permanently leave that. And we see that at our location as well, where people will come and stay with us for just a few days until that person that caused them harm de-escalates, and then they plan to go home. because that's where their life is and they're not ready to fully leave yet. And so we're there to support them, safety plan with them, and provide them the resources and know that we're always going to be a safe place for them if they ever need to come back. But there certainly are people that come and see us 4, 5, 10 times sometimes, so.
Piggybacking on that question, since somebody brought up, I've heard the statistic that women are more likely to be murdered when leaving rather than when they stay.
Correct. Yes, that is, you know, there's more acts of physical violence, and it's oftentimes when you see the most homicides taking place, domestic violence homicides, is when an individual is preparing to leave or has just recently left that relationship, because that person feels a loss of control, and that's oftentimes when there's more escalation and more physical violence that takes place.
I worked for a hospital in the Upper Peninsula, and they did a program on what is the #1 health issue facing women today. People thought breast cancer, it's domestic violence. Okay, question number 3. You mentioned summertime. Are things hot during holidays as well? You find
Yes.
people show up like at Thanksgiving and Christmas and.
Yeah, our shelter numbers fluctuate constantly, right? It depends a lot of what's going on in the community, when there was the eviction moratorium that was in place. You know, so there are different factors that are happening in the community that kind of show some of the trends that we experience at Christine Ann. There are times though when we typically will see an increase, and that is usually when summer comes rolling around and kids are out of school. And what we kind of contribute that to is that, you know, the parents don't want to uproot the children in the middle of the school year or during the school year. So they wait until the child is out for summer break. But also the holidays are an incredibly stressful time, and also a time when we see an increase in our shelter services.
My final question, since you were talking about children, made me think, do children sometimes show up alone because they've been abused?
So we can work with children on a one-time basis without parental permission. After that, we need at least parental permission from one parent to be able to continuously work with that child. When it comes to our shelter, we can house 17-year-olds who are unaccompanied minors who do not have a guardian. Those individuals can stay in our shelter as well.
Okay, that's the end of my questions. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Over there, are you okay?
Oh, you're okay.
Okay. Anybody else have a question?
Oh, I've got a bunch of them as well. Thank you for your
4 or 5.
questions, Karen.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I said the limit's 4 or 5 now. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Thank you for letting me speak. I am going to ask about people who are trafficked.
Sure.
Do you do anything to help them out?
There are certainly times when domestic violence and trafficking intersect. If individuals are on the part where there's not an intersection of domestic abuse, that is typically where we will refer to other local supportive agencies, UMOS, Reach Counseling, Damascus Road. But when there is the intersection of domestic abuse and trafficking, yes, we absolutely work with individuals who are experiencing trafficking.
Okay, and one of Karen's questions was the seasonality of this.
Yes.
And it sounds out, for my husband, a physician, it was the full moon.
Mm.
And people would show up at the full moon, and you've answered that. How long do people, generally speaking, stay?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do not have a length of stay policy at our shelter. It really depends on each individual's unique safety concerns that they are experiencing. The mathematical average from last year was 41 days an individual was with us.
Is there a maximum number of days?
No, we have had individuals that stay with us. As particular situation, we had someone who was going through the citizenship process, and their abusive partner was using deportation as a manipulative form of abuse. And so they were with us for up to 2 years almost, for as long as it took for that citizenship process. Because I mean, you can't get a job without a social security card. Housing is near to impossible. So there was a lot of barriers that that individual was facing. So it really, again, is unique. Those are kind of the one-off situations that we don't see too frequently, but definitely happens.
Okay, support from the county.
Yes.
I don't know that how do y'all work together?
Yeah, well, right now we receive some funds from the Department of Human Services that support our shelter. So that's about $65,000 that supports our shelter each year. And that is a current way that we support, or that we are supported by Winnebago County. We also, in partnership with law enforcement, we train Oshkosh Police Department and Winnebago County Sheriff's Department every other year. We are in the process of setting up time to get into Neenah and Menasha and Fox Crossing as well. But we train law enforcement on the lethality assessment protocol. So when they go on a domestic violence call, there is a lethality assessment protocol that they ask the survivor in that situation or the victim in that situation. They ask a series of questions and then they will connect them automatically to our organization. So we do continuous training each year with local law enforcement as well, to make sure that they understand the complexities and dynamics of domestic abuse.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You spoke about legal advocacy.
Yes.
That's wild.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine having to deal with a lawyer and figuring out how to make this happen. And I believe, I know the last thing. I have been going to the ARPA meetings, the Spirit Fund meetings.
Sure.
And y'all are asking for money.
Yes.
Can you tell us how much?
We put in a request of between $750,000 and $1 million of the Spirit funds to help support our capital campaign project. And the biggest piece in that is the transitional housing, which we feel does help fill a gap in the community that's currently missing.
Okay, even though they suggested that $500,000 would be a maximum.
Yes, and in the original application that got put out on the county's website, it did say in there that they were also taking requests above $500,000. You just needed to have a strong case in doing so, and we do feel that we have a strong case. So that is why we asked for more.
I would step in and say that as I recall from the papers that we received at the time that they made a presentation, the ARPA Spirit Fund came and made a presentation, the lady from United Way. Christine Ann was only asking for 4% of their total amount. And my feeling is, if you've gone that far, you just need 4% more to get over the finish line. That seems like an agency that we should be supporting. So yes, it was above that, but they are already at 96% funding, so that's an important part.
Yeah, I know that there are members of the board who believe that the Spirit Fund dollars should not be going to charities. How are you going to go about addressing that?
Yeah, it's definitely a hurdle that that I've been watching all of the county board meetings and the ARPA meetings as well, just to kind of get a pulse on what that looks like. And all we can do is educate individuals on the need and why it is that we're asking for the funds that we are. We did see that in the last board meeting, there was a nonprofit that was supported by county board Spirit Fund dollars. So that was really wonderful to see, and we really hope that that they understand the need for our organization's growth. It's very unfortunate that that growth is needed, but we are at that point where we are turning away between 60 and 80 individuals a year who would otherwise be accepted into our shelter, but because of our current limitations, we cannot. So
I understand that. I believe that tomorrow at their meeting, they've got 4 nonprofits who are going to have their requests addressed.
And I will be present at that meeting tomorrow too.
Are you one of the 4?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
Mr. Mass, that's good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, now I got some. Okay, Larry?
No, go right ahead.
Well, you got on 2 because I was really concerned about that. Number one is, what can we do? I mean, you know, you hear about abuse and you hear about it. Is there signs that we should look for? That, you know, from what I understand, the situation's tough. It's mostly women that are afraid to leave because they think there's nothing else. But if you see it, you know, you can talk to the person all you want, but if they don't do it, it's kind of hard. Is there anything we as a citizen or a friend or know something that we should do to take this next step for safety wise?
Yeah, absolutely. That is a great question and something that we get asked quite frequently. So as an organization, we provide free informational presentations or in-depth trainings to different workplaces, faith spaces, businesses, service organizations who want to learn more for this exact situation. We recently just launched a training program called R3, which is meant for people in leadership to help understand if someone in your life, if one of the employees that you supervise is impacted by domestic abuse, how to appropriately support that individual without further isolating them. Because a lot of times I think people mean well, but it can sometimes put people in danger if we automatically just assume, well, you need to leave and you should do this. And so sometimes that's not always the safest option. Like Karen had brought up with how leaving is one of the most dangerous times. So it's really just offering that support, validating that individual, making sure that you believe them, because that's one of the pieces too, is they feel that they're not going to be believed. And then know the resources in the community. That's a huge piece of it as well. And if you know the resources that are in the community, whether that's our organization or Harbor House or Solutions or Day by Day, it's just one more resource that we can give to people so that they can start building that support system back up. And even if you're seeing something and you say, hey, I noticed that you had some bruises on your arms. Are you okay? Do you feel safe at home? And they may say like, no, mind your own business. Okay, like that's not a problem, but I just want you to know that I'm here for you if you ever want to talk. And just leaving the door open shows that you're a safe and supportive person for them, which can make a huge difference, because some people may not be ready to talk about it right away, but to know that you care and that you're there for them is a very important piece in that. But if you want additional information, I'd be happy to talk about some of the different presentations and training.
I'm just thinking, like, if you see it happening over and over and they're not listening to you.
Yeah.
At that point, is it just let it go, which I hate doing? Or do you make a call and say, I feel there's something wrong here? And is that right or wrong?
It's very hard being the loved one, right? And watching someone that you care about very much who is in that environment, and it's so complex. So I think one of the pieces that we can do is just better understand domestic violence as a whole so that we can help understand the shoes that that person is in, because you really don't know. And before I worked for Christine Ann about almost 8 years ago, I didn't really know a whole lot about domestic abuse, and you really don't know it unless you're either in it or you're immersed in it within your workplace like I am. So like those presentations or just sitting in and learning about the power and control wheel, which is a wonderful resource. Also a great resource to pass along to someone who may be in an abusive relationship as well, so they can look at that and reflect on their own. We have a ton of resources on our website as well.
Alicia, could somebody like Ralph call the crisis line and
Yes.
get that help and be able to process, I have this
Yes.
neighbor that's going through this, and that you guys could help in that moment?
Yep, that is what our 24-hour helpline is for as well. It's not just for the survivors themselves, but it's for the community members to call and ask, hey, someone I know is impacted, what should I do? How can I help support them? So thank you for bringing that up, because yes, that is a huge piece of what our 24-hour hotline does as well.
Okay, two more things. Next one. Oh, I'm sorry. You want to go ahead? Go ahead.
I have a question for any one of the county supervisors. That spirit fund, is that funds restricted to one-time expenses only?
Yes.
So if you get, I don't know, you threw in a 500,000, and you threw about $1 million, so you get that for 2024. How are you going to handle it in 2025?
So that would go towards the acquisition of the beach building. So it would be a one-time purchase of the beach building is what those funds would be going towards.
You said you were gonna use the sale of your present house for that.
That is also going towards, so the sale of our current building is a piece of the diverse funding structure that we have in place to be able to move into the beach building. So, because the beach building cost and renovations is more than what we are currently selling our current building at.
Going the same language as that is I, from the beginning, was always for the nonprofits being left in there at the 25% they took out. And the reason for that is that I figured people with the pandemic were really affected. It wasn't the bridges or the roads and things like that. People are affected. And I think when we look at, I think they had 78 different possibilities for the nonprofits to get some money. Was good because 3/4 of them, or maybe more, have really done a lot of funding of their own. And they kept on referring to the Homeless Act because we did that, we shouldn't do any more. But here's an example that they've done a lot of this on their own, 3/4 of it. So the extra $1 million just makes the thing successful more. And it's there and it's for the people, which is why I agreed for this and I believed in this a long time ago when they took it out of there. So I'm glad you're on the next 4. So that's good. The last question, again, is starting with the one before, was police. Police come to your house, you know, or if you have a neighbor that the police are over there 2, 3, 4 times. And I don't know what the results are, but if they come to your house, there's a disturbance, what happens? You know that, or is it? Do they take somebody home? Does somebody stay? Or the second time, is there certain rules? I'm just curious about that.
So when it's a domestic, they will automatically perform the lethality assessment on the victim in that situation. So then what happens is they will connect that individual to our services. If they need a ride to our services, or excuse me, to our shelter, police will oftentimes drop them off by us. Otherwise, there is a time where they say, one of you can't stay here tonight. And then oftentimes it's relying on our community resources to hopefully get that person to a safe space.
I think police fear domestic violence calls more than about anything else because they're likely to be shot.
Yeah, they have that.
Yeah, I mean, on a domestic call, I would say 8 out of 10, maybe 9 out of 10, somebody gets arrested. That's just the rule. One of them is gonna get arrested.
Cool it down, right?
Yeah. Or taken away, yeah.
The other one kind of, I think I forgot it though, but I was thinking, I forgot it. They threw a curve at me. No, did you have something?
Oh, yes, I've got a couple more questions.
Oh.
Do we know the percentage of the community who are domestically abused?
Yeah, I don't have those numbers off the top of my head here. What I can tell you is that 80% of our clients are Winnebago County residents. We have a very small percentage that's coming from outside of our service area, but 80% of our current clients are coming from Winnebago County.
Okay.
And then there's also the percentage that's coming from Green Lake County, but the majority of our individuals that we serve are coming from Winnebago County.
But as far as the 176,000 people in Winnebago County, you don't have a percentage of those who are domestically abused?
Not off the top of my head here, but
There's statistics to care about how many people you actually know about. Like Christine Ann's they're only seeing the people who are coming forward. There's a very large percentage that they will never even know about in their county.
Right. Yes, when you talk about like the national statistic of like 1 in 3 women and 1 in 7 men are impacted by domestic abuse. If we were to apply that statistic to the demographics of our county, we would be able to see how many people are impacted and then how many people we serve, because not everybody, right, wants or needs our services,
sure,
but a lot of people do.
Sure, thank you. If you've got somebody who's pregnant,
yes,
what happens if they are at Christine Ann and they deliver a baby?
It's happened before.
I bet it has, and I'm just wondering if you have heard of VIDA.
VIDA.
VIDA in Appleton
Okay.
is a pregnancy crisis center.
Mm.
And they have actually just purchased a nursing home and have housing.
Yes, I have heard of VIDA. Yes, it is brand new.
Well,
Or this,
about
this,
a year old.
Yes, yes. Yes, so right now, and it does happen quite frequently when people are coming to us and are pregnant, very pregnant, and will oftentimes give birth. We will provide them with all of the necessary resources and things that they may need with having a newborn and staying in a shelter. And then they may also have other children as well. It can be very stressful. So we supply a lot of the necessary items that those individuals may need, but then we also connect them to other community resources too, to get additional support for them.
Okay, like Bella as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Last question is, can you give me the cost of the beach building and what you're selling the Christine Ann building for?
Sure. So our total campaign is about $6.3 million. The acquisition of the beach building is the majority of that. That is about 5.5 million. We are selling our current property for $1 million. So we have 67% of that 6.3 million that is currently committed. So we are well on our way for fundraising and doing a lot of current fundraising of community donors, community organizations that are giving to support our campaign. So we're about 67% raised currently. And that is including the sale of our building.
Okay. How long have you been working at getting donations for the beach building?
For about a year now.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? I have one, but I forgot what it is. Oh, I know what it was. It was simple, but not, I know. No, I get, and I was on the police thing, but I was, at one time, the police department around the country have been talking that rather than police officers don't go to an incident, whatever it might be, they were talking about like a social worker or some other person going that was more relate to whoever it is more than the police. I just asked your thoughts on it. I don't know if that's something you thought about or ever thought about, but at one time was a big thing that they thought the police shouldn't be going to some of these crisis situations. That someone else should be with more knowledge how to handle a situation better than the police officer.
There are some communities and counties within the state of Wisconsin that are doing a model similar to that, where it's not this or that, but they're doing it in together. So when there is a response that when there is a domestic call that police are going to, there's also an emergency response team of domestic violence advocates that would also go to that call and provide support on scene. Our organization is not currently doing that. That's not to say that that's not something in the future, but it's not a current program that we have, but there are communities that do.
Great. Anyone else have any questions? Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you, yes.
Thanks for hanging with us.
I brought some resources as well that can be passed along, just our brochure and some pull-off tear sheets as well. But thank you all
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you for what you do. too.
Yeah, thank you all.
You don't want to take over there?
He's like, you got it.
He's trying to say, okay, now,
Go ahead.
okay, when I was asking about the improvements, usually we have to approve ADC or ARC or something else. That's not on there.
Yeah, there's a reason for that.
Okay, good. That's why I'm not.
Larry?
Very good.
All right, I just want to apologize that I lost track of time. I've been kind of, I should have done this on the agenda. I am preparing for tonight's public, judicial and public safety, because what some decisions they're doing tonight is going to drastically change this committee next year. So I just want to.
Not on there, Larry.
I know, that's why but that's why I was late. I was preparing for tonight's meeting.
Good. Okay.
Where are we at?
Number five.
All right, Then approved minutes of the October 2nd, 2023 Human Services Board meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes of October 2nd, 2023 Human Services.
A motion to
Board.
approve, is there a second?
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, then inpatient and institution placement stats.
Okay, so these are our usual graphs and okay, it looks like this. It's in your packet, we'll further down. They're basically graphs, and I start out on page 1. I'll tell you what each one is.
Thank you.
Okay, so on page 1, the first top of the page is CW division, which means Child Welfare Division, and juvenile corrections. We know that to be mostly Lincoln Hills. That's the place. It's a juvenile prison for teenagers. It's Lincoln Hills and Copper Lake. It's over north of Wausau, and we have not had anybody in that placement situation for several years leading up to just the last year. And we've had our first placement there in many years now. And it's a very.
We do have someone there now?
Yeah.
We do have one.
One.
That is because the judge decides that, based on the child's, either the severity of the crime that they've committed or other extenuating circumstances, that no lesser placement is advised, so they decide to place a person there. It's all at county expense, it's all levy, and it's running close to $1,500 a day. So it can be close to $500,000 a year for one placement. So we design all of our services typically to try to be community-based and wrap around the family in order to avoid this, but we keep track of those placements. When I first got here, we were averaging somewhere between 5 and 10 placements a year. And that's come down substantially over the 17 years.
You got a question, Joe?
Yeah, Bill, I thought someone told us a while back that the state was they were planning on building 2 of these new organizations, one in Milwaukee and one in Racine or something.
Yeah, they were gonna build smaller, more community-based placements, and they haven't come to terms with that yet. They've allocated some money, but it still hasn't materialized yet. So
Okay.
we're still Lincoln Hills until otherwise.
And Copper Lake are still there.
And Copper Lake is for girls, Lincoln Hills is for boys. But it's in the same location. They've just, it's about 40 acres in the middle of trees, kind of north of Wausau, and it's like razor wire fences, and the kids live in kind of barracks, barracks-like, situations. They have a pool on site. And that's our least preferred placement, if we can at all avoid that. So anyway, as far as I'm concerned, we're doing fine there. One placement isn't going to kill us, although we right now don't budget for a full year's placement. So what we have to do is, if at the end of the year or getting closer to the end of the year, we don't have sufficient funds from other operational expenses to move over, we'd have to go back to the county board and ask for more money for that. Next one is the bottom of page 1 is Child Welfare Division, Residential Care Centers. The one that almost everybody has heard of is Rawhide. And so it's a residential, kids stay there for typically a year, sometimes 2 years. It's not locked. Kids can walk away from it. And it's more of but it's still more of an institutional feel to it. There's about 10 different residential centers around the state. And right now, as of last month, September, we had 2.8 kids placed. 2.8 means that we probably had 3 kids, but only a partial month for one of those kids. That's how we get the 0.8s and 0.5s, and because it's not a full month. So we had 2.8. And we budget, so if you can see the red line and the green line actually overlap in this particular graph, which means that we've budgeted, the red line is what we budgeted, and the green line is the average of the placements for the year. So we are perfectly matched right now for budget versus average ADP. Okay, so we're okay there. That's fine. Now, page 2. Page 2, you flip it over, and it's EH division, which is the Behavioral Health Division. And basically, these are hospitals, specialty hospitals like Winnebago Mental Health Institute. where we have to pay for that placement, because Medicaid doesn't cover certain hospitals because of something called an IMD exclusion, which is Institute for Mental Disease, that's IMD. And sometime back in the 40s or 50s, the federal Medicaid decided that if you were in an institution of greater than 16 beds, meaning an institution for mental health purposes, that Medicaid wasn't going to cover. I think they were trying to de-incentivize large institutions, and so they had a Medicaid penalty, which was, we're not going to cover with Medicaid. Well, we've realized over the years that that's, I'll use the term insane, that's unrealistic. That's unrealistic, I did a pun there. Unrealistic that you can only have 16 beds for a state institution. So right now, what's being authored right now at the state legislature is to apply to the feds to allow for up to 30 days for the IMD exclusion to be removed. And if that passes, and we apply for that exemption with the feds and they grant it, then for 30 days of every person's admission to Winnebago, Medicaid would have to cover it and we wouldn't have to cover it anymore. And the daily rate is $1,500. So it would be huge. It would be tens of millions of dollars for all the counties in the state to have that exclusion be removed. So we're advocating, of course, strongly for that. But if we look at our trends, and this happens in the mental health world, is that you can have very low months of admissions, and you can have very high months of admissions, not necessarily related to the full moon, although some people say that the full moon has something to do with it. But we've had some low lows this year, as you can see, March, and we've had some highs, which is May and June were really high months. And this particular graph, we're kind of remaining steady now in September with 4.1 average daily population. So not terrible. I wouldn't say anything wrong there. And then behavioral health, specialty hospitals, that's the bottom one. This is for kids, that identify kids in inpatient settings. And even though the spikes look very high, the numbers actually there are very low. So for September, we had, is that 0.01?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so that was somebody that went in for a very brief stay in September. So those numbers, that number is really good. If that stays down there like that, that'll be really good. So, and again, our staff, what we try to do is when we hear of people needing to go to the hospital, we have crisis workers out there day and night. We're working with police. We're trying to figure out, what if we can divert people to something other than a hospital, we will try to do that. We have a 16-bed adult crisis center out north of Parkview that we utilize, try to defer some adults there. It's not a kids facility, it's an adult facility. So we're really trying to manage. What we're trying to do really is manage the situation, manage care, this whole area. So, and you can see some months we do great and some months we don't do so great. But overall, I think our numbers have stayed pretty consistent over the last number of years. So anyway, that we report on that because that's also a big cost center. And then finally, page 3, actually that's page 4 now. So page 3 is child welfare and secure detention. So this is a contract we have with Fond du Lac County. They have the only juvenile jail facility. So it's a place where kids go if they get apprehended for a crime and they're waiting for a court. They have to stay at a juvenile detention center. We don't have one in Oshkosh, so we have to contract with Fond du Lac. So the kids go down there, and we contract for, is it 3 or 4 beds?
4 beds.
And we tried to get it down to 3 with them, but they said basically you have to stay at 4 or we're not going to contract with you. So we contract for 4 beds all the time with Fond du Lac. And we track our populations here. We've been doing pretty well. I mean, this year we're probably averaging about 2.2 from the looks of it. So I still think it's better to contract, because if we don't have a contract, even if we're paying more beds than we need, If we don't have a contract, we will be sending kids all over the state. And that is really rough on the families, and at least at Fond du Lac, if the families want to come and visit for a weekend or something, it's easy to get down to easier to get down to Fond du Lac than to go to Milwaukee.
How do these kids get educated?
The ones in the detention are only there for up to 30 days. They do coordinate with the school districts. They do try to get worksheets and things for the temporary time that they're there. If it's, you're talking Lincoln Hills, we were talking about Lincoln Hills before, they're there for a year, or residential, they're there for a year. Then they do have school on site, and then they coordinate back with the school district.
Question, now you say we contract for 4, right?
Yeah.
But since January, we haven't even been close to 4.
Right. So the thing is, and Ned is constantly monitoring this, and we're always talking about, since Fond du Lac said 4 is the absolute minimum, it's either 4 or none. And if we go to none, we can get a bed at Fond du Lac if they have a bed available. But it's very risky because they're going to take any and all comers that want to use their facility on any given day. So
And we dropped it to 4. We had, what, 6 at one time?
We were as high as 7.
Seven beds at one time, and we diminished it.
their daily rate is actually cheaper than some of the other counties that we go to. So yes, we have to contract for 4, but we could just as easily have 3 there tonight. You never know. This is an average daily population. So sometimes, I'm guessing, Renette, sometimes we have more.
Just last week, we had 5 kids there.
Yeah, you have 5 kids, but over the course of the month, you know, if you have a low rate, it averages out to 2 or 3. So we benefit by having 4 beds because they can't say no.
What happens on the flip side now? There's 10 different places that are doing the same as we are. They take 4, but they're only using half of them. Do they refuse people, or do they take your bed that you already paid for?
If they use one of the beds that we pay for, they give us the back that is.
They will, okay, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you.
Fond du Lac has always treated us very fairly, so, you know, I would tell you, if I thought that they were playing games with us, we need to look further, we have to do that, but they've been straight shooters.
Limited beds are in this state right now, so if we don't contract for beds, we won't have them.
So that's what's going on with that. And then at the bottom of the page is Child Welfare Division foster care. So this is the number of kids that we have in foster care placements as of September, which is 42. And we have been a lot higher over the years. And the reason that there's many reasons why it's come down is because we're placing more kids with like kin. So that we have done a better job of placing kids with like kin, which is actually better for the kids because then the kids know who they're going with versus if they go with foster care. We still have to have foster care because there are some kids that don't have like kin or for some reason it doesn't pan out. So our foster care is still important and we are still recruiting for new foster parents, but we just have historically now been keeping that number down for the last couple of years. So other counties don't have as much with like kin, so they have to have higher foster care. So if you look at the last page.
So our expenses there is for foster parents.
It's for placements.
That's what we pay, or that's what.
And there's a base rate for foster parents.
Yeah.
There's a base rate for foster parents, and then it gets ratcheted up based on the particular situation of the child. So if the child has special needs, there's another factor of another payment and you know, this and that kind of adds to their foster payments. It's all regulated by the state. Okay. When you talk about kinship care, which is the last page, that's where kids are staying with like kin, and those kin can ask for some money to help support their like kin folks, but it's at a much lower rate, and there's no incrementally bumping it up for different levels of care needs. So what's it at right now?
300.
300. So it's
How's that compared to foster?
Foster, if need be, it can go up to 2,000.
But the base rate.
The base rate for foster starts probably about $500 a month.
But it gets ratcheted up depending on the level of need for the kid. Okay. Versus with kinship, you can ask for help for your like kin, but it's going to be one base rate of 300. But they will do it. I mean, kin will likely do it for nothing if they even get 300. They would still, have it fit there. I mean, they're relatives there. But the 300 does help with, you know, paying for food, probably some clothing and some other stuff. You know, it's a little bit of help when they're staying with their wife. Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bill, it seems like there are spikes, sort of that April, May, June, but mostly May, for everything. The behavioral health specialty, the,
You're seeing some trends, you're doing some data
adults,
analysis
some
right now.
children, there's a spike.
I'm gonna hire you if you keep this up.
For what?
For trend analysis, you're doing trend analysis. Right now.
Well, okay, it's spiking in May again in,
So what
residential
happens in
care,
May?
but, and then also even kinship placement has spiked in May. What's going on?
I don't know.
The full moon.
Spring.
There's only one full moon the whole year?
Spring.
Spring.
Kids leave their rooms.
I have my Wisconsin, I'll tell you my funny Wisconsin theory on it,
Okay,
is that everybody, you think everybody would kind of lose it because they have to be cabin fever, you know, during February and March, you know, April. But when the weather gets nicer, when I feel like, oh, great, I'm feeling better now, and you know, the sun is shining, I can get out and plant some flowers. It seems like that's when families kind of start to really show all the stress that they've had over those winter months, and that things kind of get. Oh, the other thing about May and kids is that that's when did you pass or not comes into.
doesn't that wait until June?
No, they start getting notices in May
Oh,
that
okay.
your kids aren't going to possibly make it. And then the stress and the parents probably like, hey, you're gonna have to, you know, put the pedal to the metal, and everybody gets really riled up. So I mean, there's some, I mean, is that the sum total of why things go haywire in May? Probably not. But it's at least some factors that may hold. I think it's the weather situation, the schools kind of wrapping things up, and Lord knows what else is going on. Maybe people are drinking more in May. I have no idea. I have no idea. Do you guys have any other suggestions, Heather and Ed, as to why May tends to be or Beth? Why does May tend to be a bad month?
During the weather change, actually, I think this year it hit late. I think typically we see probably more of like an April, but this year I think May and June were a little bit intense. I know for behavioral health specifically, this year we had some of our private hospitals were struggling with their staffing around that time. So then they weren't able to accept admissions. And then individuals ended up going to Winnebago when the others were denied.
For naughty kids, that's not the CPS kids, that's the youth justice kiddos. They're stuck in their house all winter. So when April comes, they're out and about in the community, sometimes not making the best choices. So it can spike.
So it sounds like we have like 5, 6 different things all kind of coming together at the
And
same
we only,
time.
you know, we've seen them in the past, but I didn't save them. And we only see what happened in the full year in 18 or 19. It'd be interesting to see, is this typical? Was this typical in 22 and 21 and 20 that in May, June?
There's nothing typical that happened in 20 or 21. That was
Oh,
COVID.
yeah.
So I would say maybe where we were in 18 and 19, I'd guess probably likely.
But like Heather said, you'll see a spring burst, but like Bill described every single spring. If you go back historically, this is actually a little later. So normally March, April-ish, anywhere in the spring you'll see every year.
And even if we knew that May was all of those factors together, there's not much we can. The school is still going to get out at the same time. The weather's still going to break at the same time. I mean, maybe the hospitals don't necessarily have a staffing shortage in May, but I mean, I would say just even in my own time going back, you know, I was working crisis, and April, May seemed like bad months too for mental health. And May is mental health month for a reason. I guess maybe it's a national trend. So, but I'm teasing you, but you know, good trend analysis. You're looking for like, why is this spike happening all at the same time? So kudos. Any other questions on the statistics? Pretty good. I think we're in good shape going into the last quarter of the year.
One question, quick one I had was the foster home. What's the average number of kids in one foster? 2, 1?
I think somewhere between, my guess, and this is a guess, most homes can't have over 4 foster youth, and a majority are 2.
Do you try to keep siblings together?
We try, yes, that's a goal.
And do you ever find any kind of abuse going on in these foster homes?
You know, I would say it happens, but it does not happen frequently.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
That's it for
Janet.
Okay, so you have your financial report, and if you look at the bottom line for what we're projecting at year end, we're sticking with that about 2.8 million surplus number.
So what she's referring to is the variance at the bottom of the black and white page, and it's got in parentheses 2.868 comments 64, which we always have to project well in advance what we think a surplus or deficit might be. So we use the actuals of the months that we already have actuals for, and then we plug in typically last year's numbers. Is that what we do, or
Depends on the line item.
Yeah. So we're plugging in what we think might happen in the last third of the year, because we're always a month behind, so we still have a month, a third of the year to go yet for our projection.
I always get kicked out of the, like I said last month, when you weren't here last month, the labor, where it says false, it's not true, that stuff.
We truly do have labor expenses, and a lot this year. So in the labor category, we're projecting that we're going to go over budget like most departments because of the reslotting effort. In addition, with our department, we did the pay differential for our 24/7 operations, which was unbudgeted for this year. It is budgeted for next year. So now that we're getting towards year end, we will be doing a budget transfer for that. So I'll be working with finance because I think the plan was for them to do a budget transfer for the whole county. In our department, we would have savings in operations to transfer. So I'll be working with them to get that all worked out prior to year end. On the next page, the sort of outstanding thing is how high revenue was at the September bar. It's far above the average line in orange. And the reason for that is it's just the timing of when the state releases fun stuff. So you'll see another big spike, most likely in December, and that happens every year. When we look at the projection, nothing has really changed as far as where most of our projected surplus is coming from, and that's unanticipated and other revenue. Anything else, is kind of remains the same. Now we're getting towards the end of the year, our projections get a little tighter each month, so you won't see such big variances in what we're projecting. There is an additional chart this month, and it's just something that we do keep track of with our year-end surplus. And with what we're projecting in 2023, we're coming down back to pre-pandemic levels. So I just found that interesting. It really shows the spike associated with the pandemic. And I would project that that line is going to continue to go down over the next couple of years. 24 will probably be, similar, but I think after that, with a lot of these additional ARPA funds going away, we're going to see a change in that. So I just found this interesting and thought you might find it interesting as well.
So if I could add just for K2 that the federal year ends at the end of September. So they're done the end of September, their new year starts in October. So the state of Wisconsin is a recipient of all the federal health and human services funds that come to the state of Wisconsin. They don't come directly to the counties, they go to the state. And then the state holds on to them, and the state divides them up between their year, which starts on July 1st and goes to June 30th. And we are on a calendar, so we go till the end of December. So what's happening a lot of times is the feds are giving money to the states that they expected, and sometimes the feds give more money. Most of the time they give more money to the states because they have stuff left over in their federal year. Then that goes to the state, and the state holds on to it typically until the end of their calendar year, which is the end of July. And sometimes the state doesn't hold on to it to the end of July, so they may get it from the feds and they may turn around and give it directly. They pass it through to us. So we may get an extra bunch of cash in the last quarter of the year. We may get it from the feds. We may also get it from the state. And so historically, we've gotten some unanticipated revenues from the state that basically they say, you're welcome, and don't ask too many questions
Yeah,
about it
for
because we don't want to take the time to give you the whole analysis and do whatever. And so I know that's been very frustrating to county board members in the past, like, well, why don't you know exactly where monies are coming from and how much? And I'm like, well, this is what they do. They basically give us an extra pot of money that they probably didn't expect, that they're rolling over to us, and we say thank you, basically, and then have a little more surplus. And so also the other part is that we also have savings in our budget from the regular year that we didn't need to spend, and so we have savings from that. So those two numbers actually add to the chart of extra. This is all extra revenue over expense in each of these last 10 years, right? You did a 10-year analysis. So you can see in 2013, it was just a little over $1 million. And before the pandemic, it was at about 2.5, and we may or may not end up around 2.5 this year. So it is coming down, and it isn't that we're trying to hog, as it was said in previous budget meetings, that we somehow are not managing well our surplus. And I think this shows that we are managing our surplus. We are bringing surplus in still, and that is not in a separate fund. We do not carry over our monies into a non-lapsing fund. It goes directly to the general fund of the county. So we don't have a special fund. We don't have a special reserve fund. It just goes right back to the general fund. So because people ask that question a lot, like, well, don't you have a fund that you draw from? I'm like, we don't have one. It goes to, so all of these monies, whatever these were, all collectively have all gone back to the general fund.
This one I can still never understand, but I understand. So all those monies, all that money that you guys are the human services had left, went to the county.
Yep.
And go back to general fund.
Okay. First of all, where did this get started? Number one, how come we had a surplus in the first place?
Well, it was a deficit when I first got here.
Okay, so you caused it.
And I probably started doing those things differently that then ended up, so I'm not gonna take all the credit for all the surplus, okay, first of all. But I think our philosophy changed when I got here from just paying for stuff out there at whatever top dollar was out there and try to create more of a community service. Because I thought that over time, if we based more stuff in the community, wrapping around servicing the family, we can hold families together better and work on the problems here rather than send everybody to expensive placements out there. We had, as I said, we had five to 10 at Lincoln Hills. We probably had as many as RCCs. I mean, all of these placement numbers that you see we talked about today were at least twice or more higher than they are today. So because those numbers came down, we didn't need to use the cash out there. We were able to have a surplus. And you know, when you budget for what you think you're going to spend. And in our business, we spend it on whoever comes through the door. So it's a crapshoot as to whether you could have a great year or a bad year. When I was in another county, our budget went up and down. We were surplus one year, we were deficit another year. We just bounced back and forth between surplus and deficit, depending on what came in. I think here, one of the differences is that we're better able to track than I was in my old county. We're better able to track and make adjustments on the fly. And the other thing that I think that has changed is that the feds and the state have been more generous to us. And I think that says they're more generous to us because they recognize the good statistics that we've been producing for the state. And they want to give more monies to counties that actually are producing better results. And you'd think that they'd want to give more money to counties that aren't, but I think generally speaking, they want a return on their investment too. So I think they generally provide us more. We're the 7th largest county in the state. They're going to give us a bigger chunk of whatever the surplus is that they're getting. So, because they can't hold on to it. If they held on to it, they would lose it. Right. So they're passing it forward to us.
Aaron. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rob, let's see, in 2021, we paid for some program that wasn't in the budget or wasn't fully funded. So then 2022 comes along and we haven't been reimbursed for it, but we have to make a budget decision in the fall for 2023, mid-2020, so then we get this budget. Mid-2023, we get paid for something we paid for in 2021, and that's where we keep getting a surplus, because we know it's coming, we just don't know when, and we have no clue how much we're actually gonna see. Maybe sometimes we're pleasantly really surprised that it's better than we thought, and probably there are times when it's not as good as we thought. So you can't say, well, we're gonna get something, so we won't budget for this. You can't do that. We have to be able to afford the things. And so the stuff we afforded in 2021, then we had to budget the same way in 2022 to make sure that we would cover, and then we get paid back in 2023 at some point. So yeah, you just don't know, and you don't know how they figure, and if anybody knows how they figure these things out, they're not saying.
Yeah.
I just look at like probably 50 or 60 million dollars in the last 10 years has been given to the general fund from human services for whatever reason it has. And then when it comes time to budget, you're all trying to stay real tight, real tight, real tight. And then I'm also on the health department, and then they got 800,000 surplus left. They did it on purpose. So, you know, when you talk about, I don't know, and the highway department, the same thing is they have 3 or 4 roads they can't finish. So they have 5 or 6 other things they didn't spend, they spend it there. I always feel bad for us is that we're contributing a lot to the pot, so to speak. And so things we need or extra stuff we need to do, we should.
Well, this is the largest department. It has more employees than any other department.
But if you look
so
at
we cost the county a lot too, because we're so big.
But it depends, I mean, where do you get it from the budget? I mean, I know for 2 years, almost 3 years, when Mark Harris was there, he took $1 million out of Parkview's fund balance every year to put in the general fund. So it's not just us that.
So why don't we have a fund balance?
We've asked.
Everybody else I see.
We returned that.
Yeah,
Okay, I just hear it all the time, fund balance.
Yeah, we're told.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Oh, I was just gonna say, with a lot of this unbudgeted revenue that comes in, we are told by the auditors not to budget for it because we never know the amount. And they don't want us to just, randomly pick a number. So, so then it comes in and it is extra revenue because it hasn't been budgeted.
So that's another reason that we have to hold off on not saying, oh, we have this much, we think we're gonna get this much next year, we're just gonna spend that much, is not what auditors want us to do.
I just want the record that I want to keep as much for human services. That's I'm saying over and over again, but when I see this, I wonder how many other divisions gave us $50 million. Probably not.
Any other question for Janet?
Well, not specifically for Janet. It seems to me that the people you have working with you, Bill, are really a huge part of the success of human services.
They all manage.
Thank you all so much. And of course, I sit there and I go back to, well, it would take Doug 3-4 months for the feds to end up reimbursing him for the services that he provided. How long does it take for you
for us to get reimbursed? Well, as I think Karen just explained and Janet would say, we have some reimbursements that are probably 2+ years out.
Oh, wow.
That we do the service today, we might get reimbursed for it 2 years later. And not all of them are built that way, but enough of them are built that way that it could swing our budget easily, $1 million, one way or the other, just on some of those funds alone. So it's hard to know exactly where we're going to end up. We'd like to end up where I want to end up is close to zero, but with a slight surplus, because I think that's where I'd like to be. When I first got here, in the first few years, we were probably about $500,000 to no more than $1 million out in the surplus. I've always had a surplus since we've been here, so I've been very thankful for that. But that's probably a better place to try to get to, is like $500,000 to $1 million surplus on average. I'd like to see that. But of course, you could dip. You have a bad year and 4 or 5 people get into really some serious crimes, and maybe they commit them against other people, and then a bunch of kids have to go to Lincoln Hills all at once. And we could be, if we put 5 kids in Lincoln Hills, that'd be $2.5 million for a year.
If you had a gang, say, a gang of kids that got together and did something and all were convicted, that would be a giant kick in the.
And that can happen, that could happen anytime, you know, it's like, it's not controlled by us.
The judges.
But just to give you an example, that's why the budget is hard to explain, it's hard to budget for, we do our best we can. But going back to the staff all have the philosophy of, let's do what we can to take care of people and keep families together. And when I think we do that and we make decisions in the family's best interest, then the money takes care of itself. And that's always been true since I've been here. We've never had a bad year when we've operated this way. So I think that's the way to continue to go in the future.
Well done.
I just had one last thing, I promise, the last one.
This is it.
I did have 6 or 7.
No,
so
no,
leave me
just
alone.
one.
No, is there a lot out there that is old money? Like, you know, you said it took 2.5 years to get paid for one. Do we have a lot sitting out there that we
never really know.
We never,
I think
we never know.
what Kay was talking about with the 3 months out, that's the normal state kind of annual grant process. And that's the same with our department. We submit for reimbursement, we get it about 3 months out. The stuff that comes like 2 years later, we get it every year. But because we don't know the state's formula, and we have asked, the counties have all asked, like, how do you calculate this so we can kind of project? We never get a response. So we know we're gonna get something. In economic support, it has ranged from like 70,000 up to close to $250,000. So we don't know from year to year.
And I know that Janet, she plugs in her best estimate, and I'll ask her when we get our final total, and she'll say, one year she'll say, it was a couple $100,000 less than I expected, or it was several $100,000 more than I expected, or, you know, it's like, and it doesn't make any sense. And I can tell you from a county's perspective, and I've been working with counties on their association for 30 plus years, that we never know. We've asked and we've asked and we've asked them to tell us their formula and how it works so we can project something, and they go, nope, we can't really explain it to you. You'll get it when you get it. And it's like, how do we, and we all say as counties, how do we explain this to our boards that you can't give us the formula, you know, so that we can figure it out? It's like, well, do you want the money or don't you?
In 8 budget hearings, this is the first year the county board, somebody on the county board did get up and say, how come your surplus is so good? We explain it every year. It's like they finally got it.
So it's just a little bit of our world. Our world is more complicated, and that funding is more complicated than public health, for instance. We do a heck of a lot of third-party reimbursement billing for services. That's a big unknown too, in terms of when we finally get paid, or if we're gonna get paid, or we have to argue about getting paid. And we're kind of like a healthcare business inside of a county department. We're kind of like Theta Care, but inside of our own department. We're trying to figure out how to.
No, you don't need no more. Okay.
Good.
Write-off, then you don't have any write-offs then. If you get-
Well, we do have.
So you don't get some.
Right.
Some doesn't come.
Right.
That's
We
what-
get some denials.
Okay.
We do about
Something.
35,000 claims a year.
Okay,
So we do get some denials on those claims also
Okay.
that we will try to follow up on.
okay, that's.
Hey, Daniel?
Yes, sir. Sorry, President Mines, I got.
Hey, you're good.
Can't learn.
All right, okay. Then number 8, present, discuss the 2024's service schedule.
Oh, nice.
Oh, so Pam, did Pam present the?
Yeah, the schedule's in there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's here.
Okay, you got it?
These are our scheduled dates for next year.
Right. So the reason, just to mention, that we always have to schedule, usually away from the New Year's thing. So our New Year's Day is on Monday, so we usually go to the Wednesday of that week at 3 p.m.
Right.
So January 3rd of 24. We also have to schedule
September.
September away from Labor Day, same deal. And we tentatively put in a date for a public hearing. Now, this past year, we just did it in Oshkosh. In past years, we had one night that we do it here, and the next day we do the public hearing in Oshkosh. What I'm a little uncertain of around the public hearing piece of this calendar is what are we going to be doing for public hearing for services next year, and what are we doing for the budget? So also in previous years, we did a public hearing around services and the budget at the same time. That's because this department creates a budget by statute for the county exec. No other department has to do that. And I don't know what we're going to do because we're going to priority-based budgeting completely next year. So things could be upended. It's still a requirement statutorily that this department create a budget. So we'll have to keep you sort of, I guess, in the loop on, as we get closer to June, what we might think the budgeting process will look like.
So that's why we didn't put a date in your calendar for budget, because but we're gonna have a different process next year. And as Bill mentioned, this year, we combined, I think it was an idea, I think it was Chris's idea, we combined the public hearing with our usual board meeting. So we did that tentatively for next year. However, you all could make a different suggestion, because remember, as Bill said, we used to have different dates for that. So if you'd like to keep it.
Harold?
We're evidently for 2024, human services is going to be merged with the health department and the veterans. By going by their schedule, it's going to be separate.
See, I don't know, we might not be able to follow this schedule. And we don't know exactly what's gonna happen. I didn't hear anything about the veterans, but I did hear health. But,
I
yeah,
just want to make that point. You're
right.
gonna be united in a way, but you're gonna be not united in another. All right.
exactly.
So I think we'll just,
Sounds like it's gonna be interesting.
It's gonna be interesting. We'll just have to wait and see with the schedule, yeah, I don't know.
so we don't have to vote on the schedule, but
Right.
we're just bringing this up.
Right.
Again, if anybody's got a problem with any of these dates so far, so we know as we're scheduling, like, are we gonna run into a problem with, for instance, the 3rd of January or the 4th of September? Anybody have any?
3rd of January is my birthday, so I'd rather not.
We'll bring presents.
Oh, well, the meeting's back on.
I said you should bring
No,
presents.
Mark.
No, I think it looks good. What we
Yeah,
know
it
going
looks
in, I
good.
think it's good.
Yeah.
We don't have to adopt it, so that,
Right.
No, we
Good
don't
job.
take a motion to adopt it. We're just giving it to you for information.
thank you.
Can you explain to me, please, what a public hearing is? Because I thought at the beginning of each meeting, we had a public.
Well, that's public comment. A public hearing is a requirement by the state of human services departments to basically leave an hour of time for the public to just come in and comment on services. Like, are they happy with the service array for human services? Do they wanna propose some changes to that? So it's a requirement that we have a public hearing on services. It isn't a requirement that we have a public hearing on budget, but this county for a while combined a public hearing on services with a public hearing on budget together. And so this past year, we just separated them out and just did the public hearing on services, and we just did it on one date. And I think it was in Oshkosh, but we had it virtually so that people, if they were from the northern part of the county, they wanted to attend the hearing, they could do it virtually, so they wouldn't have to drive to Oshkosh.
Do you find that many people attended?
Not really.
I don't recall this past year was, we have had years when a number of people have come and been concerned about one thing or another.
I think the high was maybe 10 people that would have comments. And when we had it combined with the budget, a lot of folks would come in to talk about what they wanted to see happen in the budget. And then when we corrected it and said, well, this is for services and not really for budget, then I don't think we got quite as many interested in commenting on just that. But we did have some.
Did we do one in the morning? 8:30, was that something else?
So we used to do like a Wednesday night here in Neenah, and then a a Thursday morning in Oshkosh. And then we'd enter into our budget discussions right after that. So anyway, so this is, you don't have to vote on it. If we can always change this as we go along. But just so people know what the tentative schedule is. We lost our chair.
Maybe we should.
He's gone again.
Let's go on number 9. Let's talk about that.
The elevator update. Well, I have really good news. And it actually took place while we were sitting here. And today I was told that the inspector for the elevator gave tentative approval for operational use of the elevator. And it was supposed to happen between 2 and 3 this afternoon. But since we're not in Oshkosh, we can't prove it until we actually go back.
Can't go right in the elevator.
But the elevator should be operational as of an hour and a half ago.
All right.
So, and it has one other fix that has to be done, but it's not safety related. When they get the part that they have to put in, they will shut it down temporarily, but hopefully only for a couple hours. And we have been without our main elevator in Oshkosh for 15 months.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't want to ever see that ever happen again.
No, I don't either.
I made the owner's son, who was there that day, promised me that it's not going to break down for 50 years. He said he'd do his best on that. But hopefully we'll have an elevator operational for many years to come now in Oshkosh.
Short thing off of that, did they check the other elevators, make sure they're all okay in the building?
He told me that the 1925 elevator that has been operational all this time will probably outlast the new one.
Yeah, the new one.
He said for whatever reason, the way they were constructed is so indestructible that he believes that the 1925 elevator will still operate beyond the life of the main one. So.
Good example of they don't make them like they used to.
Yeah. Now, when you're riding in it, it doesn't sound like it's gonna make it, but it has been running the whole time. So the elevator is good. We are back in operation.
Good, thank you. Renee?
Right. So also a change, as you know, we talked last time where Bill's agendas items have to be on the agenda and ahead of time. So mine have to be as well. I'm gonna struggle with this because like I just like to tell you what's been going on, but I have to think of this 2 weeks ago. So here we go. So just wanted to give you an update. It's been a while about recruitment and retention efforts. So as of noon today, our department has 12 positions posted. Now that doesn't mean they're all, some of them might be worked on, like for example, I'll just choose Beth has an ADRC specialist. That division has that position posted. You might have something in the works. We may have already had interviews, but until a position is actually offered and accepted, the position stays on the internet or on our website. But
It's
as
also
of
not available till January 3rd or 3rd, yeah.
So we're way
it's
ahead
not
of the
really a
game.
gap in employment.
It's good for us to get ahead of it, yeah. But anyway, as of noon today, there's 12 positions posted. Even, gosh, earlier this year, we were running 20 some positions. So we're gaining on it. And that probably doesn't feel that way because the majority of them there are in our division right now. So it's still tough for us to sometimes to find the right person. Like Heather, how long have we had that youth psychotherapist position open?
2 years, almost, but it's been we'll come in and then.
Yeah. So, I mean, we do get people apply, but we're, as you know, we're a strong believer in, we just don't want somebody who can maybe do it. We want to be pretty as sure as we can be through the application process, interview process. And then retention efforts, it's something we're always talking about at the division manager level about what else can we do, where else can we recruit. Next month, I'm going with 2 of the human resources specialists to a training, and organization by organization. They want you and other people from your organization to come and really talk about what is your recruitment plan? What is your retention plan? Where are you missing? You know, we're trying to post in other places that we didn't post before. We've got some younger human resources specialists that I think helps in terms of they're going to job fairs and having booths there. And for example, you know, you're familiar with LinkedIn. Before an interview, it was an administrative position. Before an interview, this person sent me I don't know if it's not a friend request, a LinkedIn request. And I recognized the name, obviously, from this person that we were about to interview. And I said to Janet, I'm like, I don't know, I think it's weird. I think it's kind of weird that they're trying to connect with me on LinkedIn when we haven't even interviewed them yet. So I shared that with Jamie, our human resources specialist. She was like, oh, no, that we tell people to reach out ahead of time and find the people you're interviewing with and get LinkedIn with them. And I'm like, okay, well, good, because I was not going to accept it, but I will. So my point is, it's a different time, you know, as we're well aware, and we got to get with the program and stay up on things. So yeah, you got to get on LinkedIn, I guess, managers, I don't know. No.
So under retention, I'll just add a little bit to our report. The PTO is up for county board review and approval at the end of the month, and it is one of the ways in which we hope that we can recruit and retain staff even more in the future. And so like you guys to consider voting for that. I think we can ask for that. The other retention effort is this week. We have been paying attention to the needs of our county family, the mental health needs, the family needs, and we were able to facilitate, Human Services is facilitating a mental health first aid training for all county employees. And that was a request by John made to Renee and I, and we have been able to secure a national speaker on mental health first aid. And she's going to be in on Wednesday and Thursday, and there's going to be 6 sessions for, yes, this week for county employees. It's also going to be broadcast, live broadcast on Zoom. So it's not going to be a stationary broadcast with like an owl just zooming in and out or a big picture back. It's going to be actually done by a crew of people who are going to professionally do the Zoom broadcast. So people will, if you're attending by Zoom, you can see the person clearly, you can see what they're talking about in the PowerPoint. So it's a professionally done. We had that happen at one of our county meetings back in the spring, and we got the same group to come in and do the broadcast. So we hope that whether you're attending by Zoom or you're in person, that you're going to get a lot of good information about mental health and how to talk about that with your families, how to talk about that with your coworkers if need be, and how to assess yourself. And where are you in your own taking care of yourself mentally, and so I think we're going to have, and hopefully all 1,100 employees have access to it, and I hope they make themselves available. That's Wednesday and Thursday this week, and if you want to know where Renee's going to be, primarily she's going to be making sure it's also going to be hosted at the Best Western downtown, because we needed a large enough ballroom to accommodate 100+ people, and we got 6 different sessions. So hopefully we're going to get every county employee in that wants to go.
Speaker's excellent. She's excellent.
Yeah, and some of us heard her at NACO.
And NACO, yeah.
Excellent. So I just want to add those 2 things to retention.
Not the agenda? Kind of.
You can have questions.
Yeah. Anyway, the question I was asking was, you know, we're looking for these people for the new position, okay? Is it easier to take a person that's within the organization already that might be qualified to take that spot and move them up? And easier to get the person on a ground level type job? I'm just curious if, you know, it's easier to get that person in an opening or first time as opposed to taking it and promoting him to an experienced job and filling that one real quick, because you have somebody that has knowledge.
That's a good question. I mean, our philosophy is to find the best candidate. Now, depending on who the interviewers are, like personally, I tend to have a bias towards internal folks. Because of course we want to promote and grow our people who are already here, give them the opportunities. At the same time, I've learned this very well from Mike Collard when he was in the HR director position, is we also have, I don't know if the word is obligation, but just go with me there in terms of being equal opportunity, right, to the community as well. Like folks should have a fair shot to get in, because if we only did internal, then we never get new folks coming in. And there's a pro and a con, always. You get fresh eyes, other people coming in, there's a good thing to that. I mean, all of us were at one time trying to get into the county. So we have to be open to those as well.
I've been monitoring this for 17 years, and I think we do both. We hire the best internal candidates when they're the best, and if they happen to not be, and we have really good candidates from the outside, we hire them. So it's half and half. Really, it's kind of my experience. It really depends on, do we have good internal candidates that can do the job, and if so, and again, best qualified. So if they're the best qualified and internal, we hire. If they're not, we go with the outside candidate, and then. But every time we choose an internal, it means that we open up a space that they occupy. So it becomes but we don't shy away from that for that reason. But if we do hire an internal, it means that they're vacating another spot, which means then we have to recruit another spot to replace them. So it is more work to promote internally because of the, we're freeing up another spot. We got to do it twice, sometimes 3 times, because people move around, but we don't discriminate based on that either. So we want to pick the best candidate. And we got great people here, so we promote a lot of people internally.
I should always think of that, because where I worked before, we used to groom a lot of people for the next job when it comes up. So we didn't have to look as hard. It's easier to get a person that knows that job and does it really well, and then easier to get a person just to wash a car now or whatever it is, that way. So I was just wondering if we do that, because mentoring, you kind of do a lot with them, but also you got the experience, especially if you have a position that's a really important one to have now. And you can't find one out there, but we have somebody right here. It's easier to get that one as an entry level. I can get that job filled faster, and we can get her promoted. That's all. Just looking ahead future.
It's a lovely answer of it depends.
Okay, I guess.
Bill and I were just talking with Annette about that earlier today, because sometimes it's easier is not the right word. It may be more beneficial to bring someone in that's not, especially when you're being promoted from on the same team. That's the example we were talking about. You have, when I'm on a team and then I'm promoted, let's just say it's me, and now I'm supervising people that were my coworkers. And now I'm their boss, I'm their direct supervisor. Like that's a different skill set to have.
That's not always fun.
And sometimes, the message is like, we don't want to do that for whatever reason.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Go ahead.
I'm surprised that paid time off hasn't been happening in the past. I remember back when I was working, which was several years ago, that we got paid time off. I'm happy that it's starting to happen.
Well, we've had paid time off, but we've had it in a traditional way of, you get so much vacation time, you get so much sick time, and if it doesn't fit in one of those categories, you can't move from one to the other. I think PTO provides a number of days that you can use them more flexibly and potentially have more carryover. And I think over time, I think people are going to like it. At first it's rough because you're moving from one system to another, and then people are like, compare and contrast. I like this better about the old thing. I like this better about the new thing. But over time, I think people are going to see that flexibility is going to be much greater. Yeah. And hopefully they'll see that as a win as possible.
Thank you.
Bill.
All right, so my 2 categories, my 2 bullet points. And again, I kind of have to stick now to what I'm going to be on my bullet points. So review of the county budget hearings and changes, which I didn't know at the time, because we hadn't had the county budget hearings yet. But I will say for those of you in here who didn't listen to 3 days worth of, or actually participated in 3 days worth of budget hearings, it was a long process, probably the longest budget hearing process that I've experienced here as a department head. That doesn't necessarily bad. It was people asking a lot of really good in-depth questions on a lot of budget. As far as our budget is concerned, which I was prepared for probably 2 hours and 100 questions, I think we had a handful of questions, good questions, but I kind of prefaced the budget by saying, here's who we are, here's our department, here's kind of how things work. Maybe that helped a few people to go, oh, okay, I see your department's like this combination of other smaller departments, and your money is coming in from every different angle. It's hard for anybody, even in our own system, to understand where the money flows from. Janet will attest to this. There's 100 different funding streams coming at us, and we have to maximize and manage those streams. And then each person is credited with parts of each one of those streams. And so to break out where's the money for this particular position coming from might be about 10 different funding sources and all of that. So it's very complicated, but we got everything that we asked for. We have 28 FTEs worth of new positions. A big chunk of them are going to be in BEST division for the children's long-term support area, because we cannot have a wait list in that area, and we need to bring in an outside provider agency and make them our own employees. And the other big area was comprehensive community services, which is a mental health program for kids. And we want to make sure that all of the kids in child welfare who need behavioral health services can get access to those services as soon as possible. And we've had a lot of kids in child welfare who have been waiting. And so we're going to try to remedy that, kind of shake up behavioral health a little bit, maybe look at doing things a little bit differently as well. And again, our primary focus for kids mental health services is first and foremost our own child welfare division, because we serve hundreds of families in child welfare, and almost all of those families come with a requirement by court to be involved in the behavioral health system to get help for their families. And they can go anywhere they want, but if they don't have another resource, we have to be that resource. So we're obligated. So that's another big chunk of those positions. And then the rest are kind of supporting the rest of the service area that we're doing. So again, we're very grateful to the county board for voting for the budget. Changes, actually, we just got one change at the end, which was a positive for us. There was a mistake in the workman's comp, how much money we were going to have to spend on workman's comp. And so it benefited us by a few $1,000s, which then paid for one of the positions that we didn't have fully funded. So everything became then fully funded because of that. So actually it was to our advantage. And we got our extra van replacement. So we can finally get one of our old vans replaced. So I think it was overall a great budget year for everyone.
Our van got turned down last year, right?
Yeah, last year and the year before.
We were due.
So for K, we have about 12 vans or so, minivans that we use in various locations. We try to pick the oldest one that has 150,000 plus miles, is over 10 years old. We try to replace that van so that we keep our fleet younger than 10 years and less than 150,000 miles. So that's where we get into the struggle of, like, why do you need a van replacement? Because one of them is aging out, and we need to replace the one that's aging out. So that's what we do. Okay.
You know, the one from 1928, 25, like that.
No, we don't have a car.
Yeah, couldn't crank it, yeah.
Okay, and then our reaction to proposed PTO changes, that I put this on here because I was asked, what was your department's response to the PTO changes? And that came from the county exec's office. And there were a couple of areas of concern that were addressed in the PTO. One was around people who are about to give birth or have given birth and they need an extended period called family leave. And so some there were some questions about PTO changes starting in January and would it negatively affect them and being able to get access to the same number of days they had under the old system. And HR has resolved that. And so they will have access to the same number of days.
Are we obligated by federal law to provide family leave for?
We're obligated to provide family leave.
But
The
not
question
paid.
is, not all of it has to be paid. Some of it can be unpaid.
Okay.
But people were asking, if we had this benefit under the old system, can we have access to the same number of days in the transition year to PTO? And the answer was yes. So they fixed that. And there was another area in PTO that was same thing that got resolved with the same answer, which was we'll allow people, if they had a benefit in the old system, can they still have access to that benefit in the startup? Because in PTO world, you start out with 0 days and you get PTO days as you earn them throughout the year, as opposed to having a chunk of days at the beginning that essentially you're borrowing from. Because even in the old system, if you got 2 or 3 weeks of vacation, you were essentially borrowing those days in January. So you could use them in January. But essentially, if you left in May, you might have to pay back some of those vacation days. So you essentially were borrowing those days anyway. So, but for this transition year, since everybody would be starting technically from 0 in PTO, they're going to have days loaded so that they can draw from those days, like they did just for the transition year. So I think our biggest problems were resolved in the PTO thing. Not everybody, I will tell you, not everybody is happy about going to a PTO system. And so I got to acknowledge that. But for the ones that had concerns that they relayed to HR tried to resolve those. And you'll hear about that in the presentation at the county board in 3 weeks. So that's what I wanted to report for my report this month. And yeah, so you got another item on your agenda.
Any questions on those issues? All right, board member reports. Ralph, got a report?
The only 2 things that I would have is that, number one, I'm glad we're talking about things, more discussion. I think in a couple other meetings, another place that people want to discuss more. We love your reports and that, but we want to be able to discuss. And I think it's kind of cool that now you have the pinpoint stuff, but we want to talk about it. I think it's knowledgeable. That's good. And the other thing is I'm just so glad to be a part of this year where they finally took care of the employees, that they worked a plan. I heard so many people say, nah, they're not going to do it. They're going to start and they're not going to. They really spent a lot of time this year. Everybody put a lot of work in to make sure the employees were taken care of. Not like 2016 when they just said, no, we're not doing it. And to continue by doing this other program here. So I'm proud to be a part of that. I'm glad that they are being done. There are always going to be tweaks somewhere or another, but I think it's a good start to appreciate our employees. I think that's great. So that's fine. Thank you.
Chris, got a report?
Well, I would just like to share that we just finished, Elisa Rochetti from ADRC, and I just finished up a Powerful Tools for Caregiver class. And I just want to tell you a little bit about it. It's a 6-week program, 1.5 hours long. And we had 6 participants. 5 of them are dealing with somebody that has Alzheimer's or dementia. So put yourself in those shoes. The purpose of the program is really about self-care. And over the 6 weeks, we deal with topics such as stress and communications, and feelings. Many of the participants, if not all of them, are also having their spouse go to the memory cafes. Wonderful partnership, Beth. Just an incredible program that are pulling these individuals together. And truly by the end of this series, it was all women this time, they realized they were not alone. And that again is one of the key things that Powerful Tools is about. The session that I really like the most to teach and be a part of that teaching team is when we talk about the difference between guilt and regret. Because many of the people come feeling guilty about how they feel about the person that's dealing with dementia, or how they feel about you name it. And that guilt is weighting them down. So we start talking about the difference between guilt when you do something intentionally to harm somebody else, or regret when you feel badly because of a situation. You didn't do it intentionally. And I share the example of my mother-in-law who, when her husband was taken to the hospital after 4 or 5 years of dealing with dementia and 24/7 care for my father-in-law, when he was taken to the hospital, she said, I can't go. She had been up all night with him. She couldn't go at that time. Well, he died. And she felt so guilty. I said, it's regret. You weren't with him. You regret that. You didn't try to harm him. And by sharing those examples and talking about those things and powerful tools, you see a burden lifted and you see discussion about things they never thought they could talk about. So it's a powerful, powerful program. It's a joy to teach with Alyssa. She's a great teacher and she connects everybody in the class with incredible resources in our community. So hats off to her and all the work that's done by the department to help families in that situation. So a little bit of powerful tools for caregivers. We plan to offer it again in the spring. We'd like to have at least 8 people start with the program because it's not a counseling session. Okay, we try to keep it up high. Every week they do an action plan of something they're going to work on to take care of themselves, and we do it also. And again, that's a part of, they said in the end, it's so good that we're just like you. And we said, yeah, we're just like you. We're dealing with things, but great program. So look for information if you know somebody, and it's not just dementia focused, but chronic conditions. If you're dealing with somebody that has a chronic condition, it's not going to get better. You're going to deal with it. How are you going to do it? So look for powerful.
We also provide support for the person who's being cared for. So if the person can't be left alone, we will provide in-home support for that person while the caregiver attends.
Yeah, that meant a lot to one of the women in the group because her husband came and then had a caregiver there every time.
That was a recent addition.
Yeah,
That's great.
Hey, what kind of, you got a report?
I don't think so.
Just work.
I've been talking enough.
All right, that's fine. Harold?
No, Mr. Chair, no report.
Mark?
I just have one quick thing. I was just appointed by the state of Wisconsin to the Area Agency on Aging Advisory Board of Directors, which is the agency we get our funding for the ADRC. And Beth, very familiar with this. We oversee the formula that the state does, and it's a statewide position, non-paid, of course. And we have meetings, 4 meetings a year, and we figure out how to divide up the funds based upon federal and state, and then allocate it out to the counties. And then, but then also there's special monies that go out, like powerful tools for caregivers and things like that. So I was honored to be asked to be on that. So
Congratulations.
thank you. One of 9. There's only 9 members around the state. What I'll do is, if anything pertinent comes up, I'll let this group know. Otherwise, I won't talk on that. But I was honored and not doing a press release. So it's kind of neat, and I'm best familiar with it. And
Congratulations, that's awesome.
Yes.
Thank you. We do meetings via Zoom, so I won't be submitting mileage or anything or any expenses. So I was honored. So
Congrats.
thank you. That's it.
Karen, you got a report?
More like a question. Has Wade set a date for the holiday party?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
You should have emailed
It's been sent out an email.
Can you do that either?
Well, you saw me go through my emails. It wasn't there.
I printed it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, December 6th. It's on Wednesday.
I did receive one, thank you, and I think I responded saying that I'm.
December 6th, yeah, it's a Wednesday, right?
I'll have,
That's one
we'll have Pam double check. I'm
I'll let
pretty
you take
sure
this.
you're in the distribution list.
So yes, we want you to be there. It is.
Maybe we
It's
weren't
a
invited.
meeting and a luncheon. The meeting part is to recognize all of our employees, and we do, the Wave Group does recognition pins for people at the 5, 10, 15, 20, 25-year marks, or 30, 35-year marks. And
I got a 35-year one.
we also have board members, any board members who attend. If you would like to say something to the employees, thanking them or talking about anything, you're more than welcome to do that. I'll ask of the people who are attending or board members if they want to get up and say something to the group. John Damore, exec, usually attends and says something as well. And then
Sign cards for the.
oh yeah, sign cards for the people in the nursing home. And one of the perks is usually the board members get to go through the line first.
This year you're at the bottom. Just kidding. Kidding.
And there's also some fun games and gifts. And so it's a nice fun employee recognition lunch.
And are we inviting
Yes,
retirees?
retirees are invited as well.
Lots of food.
So I can eat twice.
Yeah, he's a good idea.
Yeah, as a board
Yeah.
member.
Twice as a board member and a retiree.
That it, Karen?
No, that's it.
Yeah, she's got it. Just keep it.
I got nothing.
Karen,
You
do
know
we
what it
use
is?
your,
Yeah.
do we use your personal email? Is it maybe going there instead?
It may be there.
Okay.
All right, nothing else, then I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, we're adjourned, thank you for coming.